We're now going to create the brake caliper package from this section here. So we're not interested in creating a model of the brake caliper, but just one that gives us a clearance surface that we can check the back of the spoke against. So we want a minimum of 4 millimeters clearance in this particular area here. Now we're going to revolve this, and we could pick one curve and revolve it. So if we go into the revolve menu there, we want to create a revolve that goes through only 180 degrees, because we're only interested in looking at one spoke, and that'll be enough to tell us whether we've got the clearance or not. So we're going to create a sweep angle of 180 degrees. We're going to have two segments, so 90 degrees each, and we're going to make them degree 7, and that'll make sure that we've got a proper circle in this area. And I'm going to just switch that onto local, and I want the axis to be the y-axis, so this is the y-axis here. So I might expect that if I pick this curve, that's going to give me what I want. But sadly it isn't. You can see the axis of the revolve there is up here and not along the y-axis. The reason for that is that we've chosen local. What we could do is pick global, which does that, which is exactly what we want. The only thing is that in general we don't want to pick global, we want local, in that we are often wanting a point of rotation that we're controlling rather than the system. So what we could do is go and pick that curve there, and the reason why it was revolving up that way and not down the way we expected was because the pivot point is up here. So what we need to do is move that pivot point. So we can do a move pivot. We can either snap to the grid using Alt and click, or we could actually go up into the user prompt up here. So I'm going to put in an absolute value of 0, 0, 0. In other words, X, Y and Z are all 0, which is that point there, and type that in. So now that's our pivot point, and if we go back into the revolve function, you can now see that with local on, it's actually revolving it around the y-axis as we wanted it. Now we could go through all the curves and do that, but that would be a bit laborious. So what I'm going to do there is just delete that object, and instead of doing individual curves, we're going to group those curves together. So in the caliper layer, we're going to pick all of the objects, so that's all those curves there, and you can see all the different pivot points that they've got. And at the moment, that's what would, our end result of our revolve would be all over the place. So we need to group those together. So let's go into Edit Group, and that's now grouped them. And if you notice, the pivot points, which were all over here, have all gone onto the center. If we go into the Windows information window, you can see that for that group, which is called Node 3, the pivot points are all at 0, 0, 0, which is exactly what we want. So now if we go into Revolve, we get that surface. So with local on still, it's revolving it about the y-axis exactly as we want it. Now the only thing is with that is that we've not quite got it in the place that we wanted. We actually want to bring it round here so that it's always behind this one particular spoke that we're going to work on. We could rotate all of those surfaces, but the trouble with that is we'll lose the history between the curves and the surfaces, which we might want to keep that history, because the history would mean that we could then alter those curves and the surfaces would update. So rather than revolve the surfaces, what we're going to do is pick object, and we're picking object because we're picking a group. So that group there, node 3, that was our curve group. So we pick that, and then we're going to rotate that, and we're going to use the user prompt up here. So I'm going to tab into there, and I'm going to type in 0. So we don't want to be rotating about the x-axis, just the y-axis, and we want to rotate it by a minus 90 value. So that will take us in that direction. So it's rotated the curve around this direction. The surface is still generated from that point 180 degrees around in that direction. And then let's just go into Window Display, Hardware Shade, and shade that up. And you can see that that's created as a brake caliper package. What we might want to do with that, so if I pick that as a group, is just colour that in differently so that it's a darker colour that we can see in contrast against the spokes. So what we're going to do is go into the control panel, visualize, and I'm going to just select a material from up here, a shader from up here. So it doesn't really matter, it doesn't have to be realistic, but just something darker. So I've just chosen steel satin. I'm picking that and dragging it with the middle mouse button into there, and then I'm just going to assign that to the selected surfaces, and there we've got our brake caliper package.